Welcome to the Echoes tutorial video. I think you're going to be very surprised by the ease of this method and just how sneaky the thinking is around it. It all started really back when I was a teenager, and I read this amazing trick. I learned this amazing trick, very common in sort of beginner card trick books, called Do As I Do. And maybe you're familiar with it. The idea is that you divide the deck in half, and then you turn over a card, and the spectator turns over a card, and they happen to be mates. You know, if you got the 8 of clubs, they got the 8 of spades, or if you got the jack of diamonds, you got your jack of hearts. It's a great trick. I still think it's a very strong trick with a shuffled deck, particularly for a beginner. But I wanted to take it to another level. I wanted to create an effect that was even more impossible with a few factors. I wanted the spectator to have a totally free choice of turning over literally any two cards. So I want to double the impossibility. Go from just 2 single cards to 2 sets of 2 cards. So I want the spectator to have, and rather than using one ahead or some kind of force or something implied, I wanted them to have 100% free choice to turn over any 2 cards in their pack, number 1. Number 2, I wanted to have the ability, because I knew it would be stronger drama, for me to be able to spread through my cards first to show which 2 cards I chose before they turn over theirs. I thought that was even more dramatic. And so you're going to, I think, be really, like I mentioned, really happy with how easy this trick is, how dramatic it is, and how with most of my favorite tricks, what I like is a trick that's where the sleight of hand is so nominal, or it's even self-working, so that I can just focus 100% of my energy on bringing that trick to life, on making it real for people while connecting with the audience. So Echoes, it is easy to do. You're going to see it never ever misses. I've created tricks like this that are a little fudgy, that you have to have a couple of outs, or that usually hit but don't always hit, something I can throw in. But this is a never misses effect. The spectator, I'm going to show you too at some point in this video. I'm going to show you the spectator. Probably the basic handing we'll do off the top. We won't include these kind of cool convincers, but you are going to learn how the spectator can shuffle the cards, and you are going to learn how the spectator themselves can cut the cards. I want to show you both those too. We'll get to those. I'll tell you more about the pluses and minuses of those. There's also no switches involved. There's no switches of the cards, which I think makes it very strong. I'm going to show you a couple other things that I don't mention in the preview about this trick, about how you can do it even more explicitly in front of people. What else? It resets very quickly. There's just a whole bunch of things that I think you're going to really enjoy about this really cool mentalism. Sometimes mentalism is a magic. It's not easy to distinguish between the two, but I would say that in my mind, this is not only a mentalism trick rather than a magic trick, but I also think that when it comes to demonstrating a real impossible psychic connection with people using a pack of cards, this is one of my very favorite. Now you're going to learn how to set up the pack for the most basic handling. Now I'll mention this several times in this tutorial, but the most basic handling is the one I strongly advise you to do, okay? I'm going to show you some convincers and some subtleties that sort of take it to another level and will definitely deceive your magician buddies. But I think the most basic handling is the most practical and still is extremely impossible for people. So here's the basic handling. First, you're going to find that when you purchase this effect from me, you got basically a half pack of double backer cards plus 2 double face playing cards. In this case, you got the 10 of clubs and queen of diamonds. I'm not sure the double face cards you got with yours. We have a few different sets of these, but let's assume if you did get the 10 of clubs and queen of diamonds, the first thing you're going to do is get a matching deck of cards, okay? Since the gimmicks are bicycle brand, you're going to need a red bicycle brand deck, okay? And you're going to go through your cards, okay? And you're going to remove 2 playing cards that are the matches. And I already have these ready. I got my Queen of Hearts. So the mate to one of the double facer cards, I have the mate, the ordinary mate. And then I have the mate to the 10 of clubs is, of course, the 10 of spades, all right? I'm also going to use about half this deck as well, okay? And you want to make sure that you've removed from the deck the matching corresponding cards as well. So you've removed your Queen of Diamonds, you got rid of that card, and then you're going to want to remove the black 10, the corresponding black 10 from that. And then from this pack, you're going to use about half the cards. So let's say about half the cards there like that, okay? So I've got half a pack of red cards with none of the cards there. I've got my my 2 double face cards, right? The matching mate cards, and my packet, my half deck of double back cards. here's the setup. I'm going to take the double back card. I'm going to take my double-sided cards here and put them just beneath the top card. Okay, just beneath the top double backer, like this. So that's like that. They're all set there. These two, what I've done with one of them, in this case the Queen of Hearts, I want you to see it on camera here, but you'd use a pencil dot. As I put with pen here, just so you can see it, I put a dot on opposite corners, not all four corners. You could, but because those are going to they're going to help me because I spread cards from right to left. They're going to help me. I've got my double, I've got my queen with the dots, okay? And then I've got my 10, and then I've got the rest of the cards, all right? And like this, and these go on the bottom. So it's my double backers on top, this setup half on the bottom, and now the deck is totally set to go into this absolutely inexplicable and mysterious psychic sort of meeting of the minds trick. To perform this effect, it's important to keep in mind that as simple as this trick may seem to you and I, it's the first time a layperson will have seen this kind of trick, odds are. And it's important to remember what Di Vernon said about that confusion is not magic. So I always find it's a good idea, particularly with mentalism effects, to use my words to make sure it's very clear what's about to happen. So as I head into this trick, I say, hey, how you doing? Maybe I've met somebody, maybe it's the first trick or the last trick, whatever. And I say, I'll be talking to people, and then I'll turn to someone and say, hey, what's your name? And as they say their name, I act surprised. And I go, Susan. I said, my name's Jay. No, I know this sounds crazy, but have we ever met before? I know it sounds sort of dramatic and cheesy, but seriously, do you recall ever meeting somewhere over the years? No, you don't. Nor do I. And yet I swear there's some kind of weird connection between us. And you could immediately establish it's not some flirty, romantic thing, or maybe it is, because in this case, this is an amazing way to establish a kind of a romantic connection with someone, whatever. And you say, well, look, I want to try something. Let me try something. And it involves, now it may not work. And if this doesn't work, okay, and I always like saying this part, as so casual, let's try something. I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to try something with a few cards. Maybe we'll click on one card. Maybe we'll click on both. I don't know. But if this doesn't work, and I can't guarantee it's going to work, but if it doesn't work, we'll immediately do something that I'm sure will work. Okay? So don't be too disappointed. This is just, I have to follow this through. There's this strange sense of connection here. And so if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. So this whole notion of, it may not work, it's an experiment, plus the addition that if it's not working, we'll try something else very soon. I find that psychology really brings everybody in. Low expectations and all this kind of thing. I think it really works well. So, we're here. Now, we've got our setup deck. So the first thing I do is I say, we're going to do this, okay? I say, we're going to try something with a deck of cards, and you can see they're not in any special order. They've all been mixed up, okay? And of course here, I'm showing the bottom half of the deck. I don't want to spread too far, because then the first double backer might show, right? But I love the fairness of being able to spread these out this way, and of course on this side too, to show everything's totally fair. Everything's totally normal, okay? Now, notice what I'm doing here, and this is key. These two face-up cards are here. So when you spread these out, you're deliberately not going to push off the top card. You're going to, with your thumb, dig a little deeper, 4 or 5 cards into the deck and get right past that block. And you don't want to cut it close, like 4th card. Even if it's the top third of the deck, that's still fine. You can spread these right out on the table, whatever you want. It looks totally legit, okay? And again, here, you don't want to cut it close. 5, 10, 12 cards is plenty, okay? But I love the fact that this deck is crazy set up in a million ways with gimmicks and all this. And you can still push off the chunk here. Be careful you don't flash, right? And then push it off here like this, okay? Boom. So that's your start. Boom. Number 1. Then you say, look, we're going to divide the deck at about in half. And now the cards are definitely face down. I'm spreading through. Say, we'll divide them about, in halfway. And notice what I've just done. I've spread the cards until I came to that pencil dotted or that pen dotted, my queen card like this. And I divide them down like this. So it's a really elegant way to get yourself all set up and say, look, go ahead, point to a pile. The pile you use, the pile you point to is the one we're going to use. Notice the language in here. Point to one, okay? The pile you choose is the one we're going to use. And if they point to this one over here, I'll say, great, that's the one we'll use. And I'll give you this one. And if they point to this one, I'll say, great, here, those will be yours and these will be mine. So this is equivoque. The pile you choose is the one we're going to use. They point to this, and then, of course, once again, I want you to get this right. I say, great. So that'll be the pile we use. And we're going to focus on this one, but I want you to hold these two. So it sort of suggests that this is the pile, and it makes their choice totally fair. If they point for this one, this is the ideal one they point to and say, that's going to be your pile. Say, hold your hands between thumb and finger, and I want you to take the cards like this, very carefully. Now, what you can do, too, is now, since these are here, right, you can very casually now just give these cards a cut in half like this, and very casually, boom, give them a cut. And that way, as you hand them to the spectator, there's less of a chance of them taking and the card revealing maybe, because as they take the cards, it's always possible they push slightly, or even if you say between thumb and finger, take them very carefully and put them behind their back. Even if they do that, it's still possible for this to pivot a little bit and reveal, and that would be a shame, right? So you give the cards a cut, you hand them to them, and say, go ahead and put them behind their back, okay? Then you take yours, and you also hold your behind your back. Now, you can hold these behind the back, or you can hold them under the table. People can hold them under the table as well, okay? So it doesn't have to be behind the back. It can be under the table, which can be more comfortable sometimes for people. Now, you say to them, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go through your cards, and as you're going to go through your cards, I want you to turn over any two cards. Now, notice, too, you could model this, and this is, they have this packet behind their back, okay? We'll just assume that that is behind their back, and that is out of play, okay? Now, here, what I can do is I can put mine right behind my back, or I can say what I want you to do is I want you to spread the cards out, okay? And I want you to turn over any card in your packet, okay? And then turn over another card, any one in the packet, all right? Sometimes what I'll do, because you want them to mix the cards, because notice, if they decide to turn over, say, the bottom two cards, and then in a bit they spread and they find these two cards are here like this together, all right? Then there's a couple of problems. First, they'll remember they were on the bottom. Second, they'll wonder why they're together, right? So what I'd like to do is as soon as they get the cards behind their back, I say, now for starters, what I want you to do is give your cards a mix-up, okay? Just really give them a big mix-up like this. And while I'm mixing up mine, what am I doing? I'm keeping my top two cards. So I'm doing this right in front of them. So it's a great way to show them what I want them to do. So behind their back, they're just mixing their cards up. They're mixing them, and they're mixing them, and they're mixing them like this. Okay, behind their back, they mix, they mix, they mix. And what this does is first makes the trick so fair. It's like, oh my, I mixed them behind my back before I did anything. It also makes sure that these two are nicely spread out. We're going to come back to this in a second. So that's what they're doing behind their back. Behind your back, after you've talked about, or in front of them, you can say, what I want you to do now, having mixed your cards, is I want you to turn over two cards, turn over a card, give the cards, turn over a card, and turn over another card. And you're literally miming. You're showing them what you want them to do, okay? Which can make it very, very clear. If you really want to make sure that these two double-faced cards don't end up together, you can do it one step at a time, where you can say to them, here's what I want you to do. Mix up your cards. They mix them up behind your back. You say, now I want you to turn over a card. Any one, doesn't matter, which they do. You show them, walk it through, demonstrate what you want, which they do. Then you say, give them another mix-up, and they give them another mix-up. And you say, now I want you to turn over another card behind your back, and they do that. Give them another mix-up. So this mixing up adds so much to the impossibility of what's happening, and it also guarantees these two cards will not be stuck together, all right? I want to mention right now, too, is if you're paranoid that these two cards still might end, and what you, of course, do is rather than putting the two cards just below the top like we talked about, you could put one below, this next one put it, I don't know, 4 or 5 cards below. That's your setup, right? That means when you spread at the beginning, you really got to make sure, as we said, these will be on top to spread and show fairly, but that way you're guaranteed they're not going to be together, all right? Behind my back, what do? Well, I've got my 2 setup cards on top here. So behind my back, all I do is turn over the top card and kind of put it somewhere in the middle of the deck, and turn over the next one and put it somewhere near the bottom of the deck, and I am done. I'm stopped right there, right? So to finish, they've mixed their cards a bunch of times. They turned over a card, they turned over another card, mixed. Totally fair choice. Now you say, bring your cards forward. So they bring their cards forward like this, okay? And I immediately take the cards from them. I put them down the table like this, okay? Or I take mine forward, okay? And if there's no table, which is great, fine, I bring mine forward, hand them to somebody to hold on to. They hold on to theirs. As soon as the spectator brings his cards forward or her cards forward, I immediately take them, because I don't want them taking them and then turning them over or looking at them. I just take them right like this, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is, I show their card first. I say, let's see what you got here. You got the 10 of clubs and the queen of diamonds. Now, you can leave this for the image of the mirroring in the end, or you can take these both out and get rid of these. Get rid of the gimmicks right away. No one's, again, the question is whether you're going to do this as an opening trick or later on, whatever. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I like the fact that I can get rid of this half pack immediately. Boom, I can get rid of it, put it in my pocket, put it in my case, whatever, and we're down to these two. Then I take this from the spectator here, like this, right? And I spread through mine. Now you can spread through to show absolutely against all odds and impossibly you have this crazy match. Or what you can do is take them from the spectator, turn them face up, and spread through, and you get this nice drama. I also think showing the face-up cards here, sort of the image of all the faces bleeds over psychologically onto their half pack. I think adds the idea that all the cards are shown front and back here like this, like that. And notice, because I have the mark on my queen, what I like about this, because to do this is sort of now the 10, and I have to kind of go over here. Of course, I could do it in the middle. I could, if I didn't know the identity of the two cards, I could sort of do this, and there's the match. But I particularly like the idea of doing this, because I know this is my queen. Obviously, that's my 10. I say, so you got the 10 and a black 10 and a red queen, and I got a black 10 and a red queen. Absolute impossibility. You are going to blow minds with this crazy trick. Now I want to show you a few ways you can have the spectator cut the cards right at the back, to cut the cards into two packets, which adds a little subtlety, a little convincer about the freeness of everything, as well as shuffle. When you have the spectator doing the shuffling in full view before the trick, it adds to it, and the cutting also adds to it. But again, each time you can emphasize that it's a fair choice, that, follow your instincts, this kind of thing, and really play it up. However, and I mentioned this before, I'm going to mention it again, you do not have to add these little convincers, okay? I think they're cool. I've used them sometimes, but mostly I only stick to the most basic handling. Having said that, let's take a look. Okay, so we want to force the cut. We want the spectator to cut right between our two halves of setup cards. How do we do that? Here are two of the probably the best ways you can do this, all right? One way, and before I go into the first way, which is involving buckling the cards and using a crimp to force the cut, I want to mention that whenever you're using some gimmicks, what I always find, even if it's 2 gimmicks or 10 gimmicks or specially printed cards, half a pack, is I tend to take them immediately and shuffle them into, especially in this case, if you're going to use them with half a deck, shuffle them all together and treat them, do some practicing with it. Your double lifts, your classic passes, your shuffles, your double undercuts. Shuffle with this deck entirely. Why? Because I want to make sure there are no false crimps or funny gaps. I want those gimmicks to really feel and blend into the other cards. So if I do want to force a cut with a crimp, for example, you really don't want, the last thing you want to do is, until you break in the cards, it's all too easy to put the deck down the table, and the cards could actually be, one could be bent a bit this way and bent a bit that way, and to such a point people can almost notice the difference between your half pack of gimmicks, the double backers, and your half ordinary pack. You don't want that. So shuffle them all together, really practice with them, put the cards in the case, leave them for a little bit, take them out, really work them in, and you'll find that with a little bit of wear and tear on them, they're going to all beautifully lie together like an ordinary complete deck of cards. Okay? Having said all that, if we want to force the cut with a crimp, what we can do is have our bottom half, of course, bending down a little bit, and our top half bending up a little bit. Okay, just like this. You see that right there. Okay? Now this looks exactly like most people's decks of cards. Only magicians have pristine decks. Most people keep their decks in the kitchen drawer and they look like crap, right? So it's not like this is going to immediately alarm people. However, what you can do then, though, is to say, let's start, go ahead, I want you to lift off about half the deck. And you can do it either on the table or in your hand. They reach over it, and as long as you don't make it too suspicious, when they lift off some cards, time and again, they're going to cut right to your setup cards there and you're ready to go. So it's just using a simple buckling of the top. And notice that you can even, when you're then going to put the cards away, if you want to get rid of the buckle, you just put them together, bend the edges a little back and forth, the buckle's gone, or the crimp. So that's one way to force the cut, if you want to do that. Another way to force the cut is I have done something to our queen now. I've reduced it to what's called a short card. And this is a cool way to force cuts as well. I still have my pencil dots if I want to use that, or my pen dots here for the demo, right? But I've shaved off just a little bit there and a little bit off both ends. You need it to be both ends with a pair of scissors, just a little. I don't even know if I can show you. Do I still have the... Yeah, here. This is what I'm talking about, guys. this came off the top or the bottom. I don't know, just a little bit, okay? And you do it off the bottom. That creates a short card. And this is another way to force a cut. If I have my setup here, the queen and the 10 here, and my short card on top, then I've got all my setup double backers and double facer there. Now, when someone comes over, you'll find this is an even more dependable way than the bend. If they just reach down and grab some cards, they're almost always going to cut to the short cards. Okay, so that's another way of forcing the cut. Now let's talk about the shuffling, because I think this is, you've divided the deck. Okay, you've got yours, they've got theirs. Two halves like this. Now what I do is I say, I'll say choose one, if that's the one, or this one, or whatever. And I say, look, and I hand them their cards. I hand them half the deck and say, do me a favor, give those a real shuffle. And they give them a real shuffle here like this. Okay? Hand them half the pack, they give them a real shuffle like this. Or what I'll sometimes do is have another spectator, not my core spectator, doing it. And then I say to them this. They've shuffled the cards, okay? I say to them this. Now, I could have you go through the cards, okay? Take out two cards in full view, okay? Taking out two cards in full view and then turning them over and putting them in the middle of the deck. But let's do it behind our backs to make it even more impossible, okay? Then I hand them theirs and I take mine and we go from there. So what have I done? First, I had them shuffle some cards because I think when they shuffle some cards, and I've never had anybody say, oh, can we shuffle those too? They just shuffle the one packet, I move on. Just some shuffling. I'm really casual with that, all right? Now, what I've done is this. They actually shuffled my queen and my 10 of spades in, so I have no idea where they are, which isn't going to work very well for the trick. Then while I demonstrate, I could do this, or what I used to do is that I'd have the spectator go through the cards and take out a couple of cards and turn them over, but I want to make sure it's even more impossible. I want you to do it behind your back. So just while pattering, while talking, I go through, I up-jog the two cards I'm going to need in a moment, put them on top, and then if you want to give the deck a little double undercut, a false cut, just to make sure nobody thinks I'm setting up anything, then hand them theirs, I've got mine, and we go from there, all right? So those are two ways to add, like I said, some free choice, the element of fairness, where they cut the cards and they shuffle. But it's especially if this is a closing effect and you've already done, you've rung this setup deck in for another pack of cards, you already did some magic and they did some shuffling, then there's absolutely no reason you have to force the cut or have them shuffle the cards. I think there is real power in the mystery of doing everything behind the backs or below the table, right? I think there's real mystery and power in that. But I also think you could be a bit more explicit, and here's just an option. They could watch you turn over your cards. And as long as you do everything before the spectator does, including reveal at the end, before the spectator's cards are revealed, I think that if you do it afterwards, then they can get suspicious. But if you do it before. So here, I've got my two cards. And these are the two cards I want to turn over my pack. So rather than doing behind my back, what I could do is while the spectator, saying you got them, okay, but actually even before you turn over a single card, so what I do is I look at them and I get a sense, and I give the deck a false cut. Then I take a card and put it on the table. Then I give the deck another false cut. Take the card off, put it on the table. These are my two force cards. Then I spread my cards face up, and slip these in the middle like this and square them in. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. I get this, they can see exactly what I'm doing, and in seeing what I'm doing, it gives them a visual experience of what the spectator is doing as well. So it really balances, the theater of it's very strong, okay? And they get to see the fairness, the total apparent randomness of what I'm doing, but I've just given the deck two false cuts, okay? So that's easy. Now, you could make it even more, and I didn't want to flash the faces of the cards, okay? I still was able to keep the faces of my two force cards hidden. Another way to do this is to have these 5 and 5, and by that I mean you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and the fifth card is one of my cards. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, and the next card is one of my cards. So in this case, what I can do is I say, okay, you're going to turn over your cards behind your back, and you go ahead, give them a shuffle, turn over a card, and while they're doing that, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it in front of them. And what I'm going to basically do is give the cards a false cut, okay? And my false cut, I'm just doing a kick cut, a kick cut with my right finger. I'm kicking the cards over. If you're a total beginner, I want you to know how to do this. So I'm kicking the cards over, take them at the top in my left, And then I bring these over and I keep a break. It looks like I square the cards, but I keep a little break at the back with my thumb. Then I riffle off some cards, okay, and cut those, riffle them off with my thumb to the top, boom. Then I riffle off and cut those to the top. And what that does, if you're not dealing with a short card, is it keeps, nice short card, worked a little too well there, folks. It keeps your setup with the queen. Oh, I see what I did here. Okay, with the queen and the. So what you want? 1, 2, 3, 4, and one of your cards. That's why. 1, 2, 3, 4, and one of your cards. Okay. So give the cards a false cut. Then what I can do is, well, looking at them, I kind of go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I turn the cards over. Okay, and I can do it in full view even if I want to. Turn over one, and then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, turn the cards over. And I'm not even looking what I'm doing. I'm just sort of, but to the spectators, there's a sense that I totally randomly went through, turned over a card, went through, turned over another card, okay? And that way they get to see. Now, you can do it in a way to conceal the identity of the cards as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a card. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a card, okay? You can do it. I can go through 1, 2, 3, 4. When I come to this, okay, I could put this on the table so no one gets to see it. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. Do this. Put it on the table as well. Turn these over, and like we did before, put them in. So this way, again, they don't get to see the identity of the cards, but they do get to see me explicitly go through and apparently randomly turn over any 2 cards. All right. So that's a way to make it more explicit. And I want to mention, too, the idea, this is a great opening trick. It's a very strong opening trick. However, it's got 2 problems with it. First, the deck can't be examined. And people will often want to examine the cards when you just take out the deck. And it can add a lot to your show. The other problem with it is it's kind of involved. I love an opening trick that happens in 30 seconds, maybe 60 at most. This is more involved. So if you're at the right time and right place, it's a good opening trick. But I suggest what you do instead is opening something short, then get out a deck of cards, do a card trick, have the cards examined, shuffle, whatever. And then at some point, you put the cards in your pocket, take out a trick with a ring or a spoon or mentalism, something else, okay, sponge balls, whatever it is, coins. And then say, let's try one last thing. And I just take out the setup deck. And nobody wants to see it again. People assume it's the same deck, and then you can go on from there. So I think this is ultimately a stronger closing trick than it is an opening trick, okay? Especially because it's more involved. And that's the kind of thing that I think a closing trick has that sense to it, all right? So I've shown you turning over the cards explicitly. We've talked about, and as a prediction, I almost forgot. This is a great rule of 3 because what you can do is you can actually have a prediction in front of them. Piece of paper, you've written their 2 cards on the piece of paper. You could do it right in front of them on a napkin, just on a hunch, and hold that in your hand. Spectator 1, spectator 2 does it. Or you could mail the prediction. I mean, imagine that. You know, you're going to do a corporate gig or whatever, and you email or snail mail, probably not email, they can hope, but snail mail the prediction to them, sealed envelope, whatever, or when you're at the gig, can you hold on to this till the end of the evening? And you could do this trick in front of 15, 20 people, no problem, at a big table or a corporate event, whatever, and then have them, after you've revealed the card, then have them show the prediction. Now, psychologically, does the prediction convey to everybody that this was somehow a force? I think not. I've done this kind of thing. And don't get caught thinking like a magician, okay? To lay people, they shuffled the cards. They randomly did it behind their back. You can't even be accused of using a stooge because it happened behind her back. There's no way she could have known the order of the cards. So it's so impossible that the prediction will only add another layer. And I love the rule of 3. It's so strong in theater. So here, what do you have? You have you revealing your 2 cards. The spectator revealing their 2 cards on beat of 2. And then third is the written prediction, all right? So prediction, you can predict these 2. Also, I've done it with 2 jumbo cards where I have a prediction there, and I've actually have not just these, but I've got a really large set. I've done this at a stage show. And we do all of this, and that's my prediction there. It's in full view. I've got the word prediction on it, whatever. We do this, and it's there from the very beginning of my show. I don't even tell people what it's about, right? It's just, that's my prediction, it's there. And then at some point in the show, either near the end or second to last trick, you do this for somebody, okay, and they're standing on stage, it's all happening behind their back, and you show this incredible 4-card match, boom, it's amazing, and then you turn to the prediction, and you get this sense, I love it, in the room where people are going, no, like Now we're going to find out what that's about, and you reveal the two cards that the spectator, or even all 4 cards that the 4 of you choose, or the 2 spectators cards. So that's another way to do it with jumbo cards. What else? There was one other thing I wanted to share with you, and that is, this last thing then is, right. I wanted to mention the prediction 2 is interesting. Because what you could do there is have the deck cut in half, whatever, the spec takes the cards, and you don't even get involved in having your cards at all involved. By that, I mean, you say to the spectator, here's a prediction, someone's holding on to that, go through your cards, now give them a mix-up, okay? Give them a real mix-up, okay? Now, turn over a card behind your back and put it back in there, okay? Now, give them another mix-up. Okay, actually, let's try another card. We'll really push my luck, okay? Go ahead, turn over another card, give them a mix-up, okay? Now bring them forward. And only now do you have someone reveal the prediction. The prediction says, the Queen of Hearts and the Ten of Spades, whatever the cards are. And then, then you spread through and show those the 2 cards. So there's a use of a prediction where you weren't even involved with the other 2 cards. That's another cool way. And the final thing I want to suggest to you, sort of for this awesome trick, Echoes, is what way I've found what prediction seems to really hit people the hardest? Texting your prediction to them just before the start of the trick. I find if I text a prediction and say, what's your number, whatever, or type in your number, whatever, and then I text a prediction and people hear, bling, they hear the announcement that my prediction's arrived. He's committed. He can't. The psychology, the modern theater of texting your prediction to somebody, and then you do the proceedings, and then boom, 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 like this, and then crazy match. Or if you're just using the 2 cards, then you have the person read off the text, and it says, I really, really hope the 2 cards you turn over are this card and this card, and then they turn those over. There's something so powerful about using modern technology. And again, it's the audio blink of your prediction, your invisible through the air prediction arriving, and the commitment involved in that really adds another level. Those are a whole bunch of ideas. But please, I'll say it for the last time, don't get caught thinking like a magician. It's too easy for a trick like this to become confusing. It can become confusing. So having them forcing the cut and shuffling the cards is fun, but you do not need to do that. And in fact, there are more opportunities, unless you're an experienced performer, there are more opportunities for screw-ups, for confusion about what exactly happened. It's easy for a trick to become too complicated, but it's almost impossible for a trick to be too clear and too simple and too powerful. I really find the simpler the trick, often like linking rings, sawing a lady in half, these floating, these are simple, basic archetypal ideas, and I think you should let the strength of those, the psychology of those, guide your own magic and keep it as basic, direct, clear, and as undeniable as possible.